So here's a continuation on the Vibe tracker and the connector pin design. Here's the piece that we made using the DLP 3D printer. And well, our goal is to insert the pogo pens inside of here so it can connect into the base station. And we need a specialized PCB to hold everything together. Here's the working prototype for the PCB. The original one looks a little bit like this, but if you can see that tiny rectangle inside of the rectangle, that's a copper trace that was an artifact that occurred when I was working with EasyEDA. So this is technically connects all the pins together and would make them a common connection. And we don't want that because each of these are supposed to be discrete and individual. So all I did was take a hacksaw and then cut lines down it to prevent the trace from overlapping. It's a brute force solution, but it works. In the future, we have already ordered the EasyEDA file, and it's coming over without the common connection throughout all of them. The most important part of this design is that it shows that it fits. Inside, we have our Vibe bracket, and we can connect all of them together, and all of them line up, and they all fit, making it a nice and easy connection for the Vibe. One important thing to note still on this 3D printed part is that the edges aren't exactly lined up. We were measuring with calipers that could only come down to about 1 millimeter, so any sort of deviation from the center would just be error and error propagation, and it happened to end up to lead to the edges being a little bit too big. But once again, easy fix, and through prototyping and iteration, or potentially buying a better micrometer, we can fix that problem easily. But yeah. Oh, and also, this is the female leads that we plan on using to cut off one end, solder directly on the back of the pins, which would be pretty easy because now we have pads to work with and the pins are made out of brass. And we connect the female end onto the shield or to the finalized PCB prototype. So this is EasyEDA. EasyEDA is how you distribute and determine what your PCB is going to look like. And a PCB is that green thing that you find inside of computers that has all the electrical components on it. And why we'd use this instead of anything else is because it keeps it really organized, rigid, and prevents human error from screwing things up more than it could. So on here are some of the components. None of them are connected, and that's because it's easier to work for, at least for such a simple board. It's easy to work with the connections directly instead of having to deal with rat lines and labels. So these are the headers, and these are the parts that connect into the Arduino from the Arduino shield. We have the resistors, which are used to create a voltage divider and then find capacitance through some of the code that's loaded up in the Arduino. More headers, which represent the input and the output of the signal. A header for voltage going in and out. LEDs to give a visual representation of what's happening on the board and the logic that's occurring. And once again, another header for an output signal. This is the PCB all put together and assembled. It's one of the configurations which further down the line, a better one was found. The line over here represents the outline of the PCB, so when they have to cut out the resin and copper, that's the final dimensions, and all the pieces need to be on the PCB. The yellow lines represent the silk screen, which is just there for identification of components and labels. And the blue lines inside of here represent the rat lines, which are connections that go on throughout the board. Here's our final version of the PCB. You can see a lot of the red lines, which are the copper traces. It's really important to note that this is just one of the copper traces. If we go to the blue, we can see some of the blue that's happening over here. It's really not, the blue traces aren't very important for this application, and they were more or less just another artifact of a open source Arduino shield that I pulled offline to get the dimensions right. And the red traces are the one that's actually going to be doing the calculation and connecting components together. It's also important to note that Easy EDA and JLC PCB will only solder and fit one side of the board with components. So I had to make sure that all of the important stuff was in one place so that they can do all the soldering so I don't have to. Our final board is right here, where all the connections are done, and the pick and place board right here is this little file right here, but I'm not able to show you more because for whatever reason it's either an analysis or blocked. But yeah, that's about it.
Hello, everyone. This is a real quick capture of some ideas. I'm interested in really working with some takeaways for our experience coming up. And again, I like to go through and look through images on Pinterest. So these are just kind of some ideas that I thought we could utilize cutouts and have some sort of inside inserts and so forth. But the real main focus of this video is trying to figure out how to make maybe 6 or 7 or 8 of these different uh, kiosk, and each of these kiosks will have 1 or 2 mixologists working behind it. So kind of went through a deep dive through Pinterest trying to find out some ideas on what we need to kind of focus on it. And then I kind of modeled up a few ideas and did a couple of drawings that I'll share with you. Um, Here's just a very simple one, and obviously not big enough for a station for someone to really work. This would probably just handing out beers and obviously a couple shelves for other things, but definitely not enough room for what we want to express with our different drinks and different types of technology that we'll be using to showcase them. But again, I kind of like this form. It's very simple. It's something that could be manufactured pretty cheaply, and again, we have to scale this up because we want to maybe 6 or 7 of these dollies or forms. So just kind of looked all over kind of different designs from all around the world. Obviously, this is a coffee shop. You see these in airports and so forth. They have a very small footprint and try to make it look chic. So different ones from around the world. Again, very simple, rollable. I don't think we need to worry about this being rollable, but again, if we're going to be moving this to different venues, it may be a good idea to kind of incorporate that into our design. Um, Again, just some crazy ideas of what we could do. Again, this is on a budget, so we're not going to have all these amazing lightings. But when you go down the wormhole, you start to look at different things. Some really cool forms that I found unique, and some of these forms are also have the actual VR forms inside of it. So I was thinking about like what could that look like, and again, these are different lighting schemes to spandex, thinking about form and stretching it to some unique, like different shapes, unworldly looking shapes. Uh, Again, I'm going down a rabbit hole thinking about unique lighting, something that's very unique. Again, the focus is the drinks and the smell. and so there'll be hopefully a lot of colors. We're still trying to figure out what those 8 or 7 forms are going to be like. These are way over the top, but I really like this idea of a unique lighting scheme. Again, trying to keep it cheap. Again, these are way over the top, but there are things that we could mill out. There are things that we could appropriate and use that are already made, ready-mades, and then light them differently. Graphics that we could come up with that are unique, surfaces, texture. Part of the kiosk could be a texture form, textures as part of the typography, and also getting a CNC machine shortly. And so the idea that we can mill out unique ways of bracketing stuff and forms. Interested in this one, maybe putting the VR form on it. And again, really quick, big sets like conferences or like a probably South by Southwest. Someone would set this up because it's very long, it's chic, and using scrim and lighting to create some sort of statement. I really like this idea. I've used scrim before for other projects as a way to create a big volume and a way to put some really cool text and context onto the site. So I'm really kind of leaning towards these kind of a big forms, and we've done this with Accelerate, where we were able to put spandex over forms, create a kind of a unique shape. These are just different artists from around the world, and really want to push typography, really have a bold statement. Obviously that's picking the right font, having the right graphics and right design. The right message of what we're trying to say also is really important. We really need to tell the backstory of each of these shapes, and also infuse that with the smell and the scent and the taste. So it's all part of the story. All right, so these are just some really crazy ideas, way over our budget, but something that we could take on and iterate and come up with some ideas. So with that, I kind of made these sketches, and I'll probably try to interweave that and cut that into this recording. And so really quickly, I'm going to go into Maya. So these were just some really quick ideas of what we could do with this space over at ICAT. So here is kind of a kiosk. This is some of these ideas of having these containers or plastic bags where we're infusing smoke into whiskey or whatever we're going to do. This could be one of our sets of drinks that we would have. And so the mixologist would work here and probably pass it over here and have a landing station where people can pick up and have their drink. I'm not sure how we're going to do the infusion of smell, but that's something we can talk about. So I kind of came up with this table in some of my sketches. Probably not practical because it's round, but I was starting to think like, how can we cut corners? And so I'm looking here in my studio, the iCat legs that we could buy really cheaply and kind of get this off the ground, do some interesting lighting underneath it. Within the iCat facilities, we can definitely come up here to the very top and have beam lights or point light coming down specifically here, and maybe do some lighting specifically just on our banners. So the effect of having that whole house dark and just really having this kind of a illumination coming off this table right where the mixologist is working, and maybe another point where they're delivered. And one of the ideas is making a container here or something where we're actually putting maybe even just a box. It doesn't even have to be scrim, but I'm thinking about a scrim that has cutouts as part of the design, the graphic design, and then inside of it is the actual puppeteered form. So each of these stations would actually have the physical puppeteer form, and these are quite big and they're unique and interesting to look at. And we could do some really cool lighting, either from above down. It could be some fluorescent lighting inside here. So, anyways, this is the first idea. I'm gonna each night come up with a new idea, sketch it, and then do real quick 5-minute model like here. And these are horrible graphics, but the idea, bringing that these silhouettes into Photoshop, I thought it would look really cool. It looks really bad, but anyways, I'm really interested in texture and kind of this kind of a new modern look of typography and graphics. Or this may not be the way to go, but I'm trying to get visual height into this, and on the cheap, maybe a scrim, spandex, things coming down, something unique. So the draw your eye from very high down to focal point is obviously right here where the mixologist, this is the art, the taste, the smell. And so as you come in, you can see kind of this kind of narrative kind of coming into play, and then infusing that smell and that taste into your memory of what these forms are going to be. All right, so take a look at those, and hopefully next week maybe we'll get to time to chat and go over some ideas.